Good evening, everyone. This is Adam Spencer doing our leadership demonstration for MSL 5331. Jumping right into it for this last week, we had to read from the Denning book, chapters 7, 8, and 9. Starting with chapter 7 was leadership present. More so the body language of leadership. So starting with leaders' presence, this chapter, beginning part of it, really focuses on body language. With that, body language is another way to really show that what we're talking about, the words we are using, have much more meaning to us than just words. If our bodies are really we're displaying that emotion, we're using hand gesture, body gestures, that can be used to really get the point across to the audience of how much this topic, whatever it is you are passionate about or a leader of, really can mean to you and why they should get on board with it. So moving on, the first part of chapter 7 dives into the basics of body language, and the first important element, actually is said the most important element, is eye contact. When you're looking directly at someone or a group of people, that connects with them more so than just looking to the side, looking down the ground, but that eye contact really can help establish a connection there. I think we've all dealt with leaders or supervisors in the past who refuse to look at people in the eye and somewhat made you question their ability of either as a leader or how serious or passionate they were about what they were discussing with you. Moving along down, the second element is throwing away the notes. Goes to say you can't have eye contact with someone when you're reading directly from a note card or a script or a textbook, and those notes symbolize a physical barrier between you, the leader, and the audience. And even if it's as simple as a piece of paper, that kind of just blocks the flow of psychic energy. Because as a leader, you are a leader. You're not just a courier of what you are discussing. You are meant there for another reason, or to really get your audience on board with your presence. The third basic is getting away from a podium or some type of physical barrier. Because again, what we just discussed again, why the nose was a physical barrier. The podium, again, is another physical barrier. It's hard to display your body language when you are behind a podium or a desk. I know with that one, with my soldiers, whenever I have to do one-on-one with them, depending on the situation, I try to avoid being behind my desk to try to have a better connection with them. And then moving on to the next basic is open body stance, square shoulders, relaxed and assertive. Being relaxed and assertive. With that, though, it just is another way of displaying that you are there for the audience, and in turn, they will be there for you. And then hand gestures, or just body gestures, not just hand gestures, helps just convey that you're with your whole body what you're talking about. I'm sure we've seen people talk about a topic and they really weren't getting their body into it, and you could kind of just tell from there's a lack of presence, and what that can mean. So as leaders, make sure we know how to use that gestures. And then finally is feet firmly on the ground. Again, this just goes back to feeding our body or using our body to help really convey and assert our presence. These seem pretty basic. I mean, they are basic, pretty simple, but it is surprising to see how many leaders cannot look at someone in the eyes when they're discussing them or talking with them. Chapter 7 then moves on to practice. It's important to note when you are discussing or talking with your audience, to know how to use your words, your tone, and also your gestures. Is there a part of your speech where you really need to get your body into it, or is there a part where you need to maybe tail it back? Then chapter 7 asks the questions of, do leaders need charisma? And they use different examples like Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., Steve Jobs. And basically, in a nutshell, with these examples, is that charisma is a consequence of leadership, because these individuals, Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., were so passionate about their cause that the charisma kind of was a byproduct of that passion, not the other way around. Leaders don't need charisma, but they may develop it. Written stories is another form of presence. Definitely does a written story, essay, email, article, book, what have you. Definitely does not replace a physical presence or a in-person interaction. But there's certainly a time and place to use that, just depending on where you are. This next part is one of my favorites, is should leaders use PowerPoints? In the Army, we love our PowerPoints. We always joke about death by PowerPoint, and unfortunately, there is a time and place to use PowerPoint. I've seen it firsthand in the Army, our over-reliance on PowerPoint and how much we use it, but PowerPoint is that when used appropriately, you'll be able to address your visual learners, but also your literary learners. You can tackle both of those audiences with the same product with PowerPoint, just not over-relying on that. And then moving into chapter 8. Chapter 8 is titled Getting People's Attention. So with that, exactly what kind of attention? I mean, per the text, getting attention means diverting the audience's focus from another external sensory signal. Squeaking of chairs, noise of the streets, what have you. With that attention, it also talks about is using the right appropriate amount of attention or tool to get their attention. If I was giving a speech about football, and then to get people's attention, I start throwing textbooks on the ground, I may get their attention, but throwing textbooks on the ground to get their attention may take away from what I'm discussing about football and conference realignment, as an example. The 6 principles for getting people's attention. First is attention is to attract what is unexpected. Routine, run-of-the-mill occurrences. It's just automatic stuff. We need to. One moment. Sorry about that. It's past my children's bedtime, and I thought I heard one of them awake. Moving on to the second principle, is to be engaged by the emotions. Emotions serve as markers. What can we do to make things more interesting? Moving on to the third is what is personal to listeners themselves. The more we have to do with ourselves, the more likely they may be interested. Also, it's important that whatever you're using to get people's attention is relevant to what we're talking about. I kind of alluded to that earlier with how to get people's attention and how that can take away from what you're trying to get their attention for. The fifth one is that it should be proportionate to the scale of the task. So you need people's attention. Don't do something big and flamboyant with fireworks or with dancers or something crazy like that if the situation doesn't call for that. If it's something big and requires that kind of attention, then certainly go for it. And then finally, perhaps most important is attention is engaged by what is negative. Humans seem to give more weight to losses than gains. So there are some effective tools. Not going to go into too much detail with these, but some effective tools is telling a story about the audience's problem, telling a story of how you handled adversity, ask the audience a question, use a striking metaphor, or launch an unexpected exercise. There's also a few different methods that are moderately effective depending on again the situation you're in. Show the real thing. Offer a surprise, make an extraordinary offer, talk about an opportunity for the audience, tell a springboard story, tell a joke, show an image, or create a frame. The text talks about that in a little more detail. And finally, there are ineffective ways of getting attention. Hype, tell the story of who your company is, and just give the facts, So with that, that pretty much concludes Chapter 8. And then moving into Chapter 9 is stimulating desire. So with that, generating desire for something different is the most difficult aspect of leadership, because leaders only have a few seconds to get someone's attention. So with that, there are considered 8 principles. Make it worthwhile for your own sake. Communication tool that is memorable. An idea must become the audience's own. The audience needs room to contribute. Be positive, but positive for a particular audience. Use a story, or the 8th one is getting stimulating desires when they generate a new story in their own mind. Some of the different methods for doing this: seeing is believing, tell a positive story, externalize obstacles to change. Use a metaphor that points to the story. Tell a story of who we are as an organization, or a memory, and also offer a positive challenge. Excuse me. And ineffective methods can include arguments and reasons, burning a platform story, creating dissatisfaction, a surprising question, an image, satire and irony, and fictional stories. I do find it funny they use Ronald McDonald as an example of a fictional story for McDonald's. So in a nutshell, that concludes this week's reading of the Denning book, chapter 7, 8, and 9. Key takeaway I took from this was definitely the leadership presence. My boss's boss, actually told me when I took command of, as a commander, you must be present and give a hoot. So that was just some key takeaways, was that leadership presence chapter. Been any questions? Thank you all, and have a good week.